Morning, everybody. Crappy Mondays, especially if you work for the MoD and you're going to tune into this. And welcome to the news agenda with me, Fleet Street Fox. And today we're doing a special update on the Nuked Blood Scandal. So I'm joined by two of the main campaigners, Descendant Steve Purse and Alan Owen, founder of the group Lab Rats. Morning, chaps.
Morning.
Now, this is the People's Paper Review, so get into the comments, ask us your questions. We'll do our best to answer them for you. If you don't know what the Nuked Blood Scandal is, you're going to find out, okay? Those of you listening later on podcast, just going to have to check the MI5 transcript. So what have we got for you today? Well, the Mirror has splashed on the safe arrival of twins for Jessie from Little Mix after being diagnosed with the rather awful-sounding twin transfusion syndrome. There's more on that in the paper if you want to find out about it. But this is my show. I can do what I like. And today we're going to give you some big updates on the campaign for recognition of nuclear veterans, which the Mirror has been running for 40 years, and I've been writing about for almost 20 now. So the latest news at the end of last week is that video has emerged of three ministers, two of them now in cabinet, not just offering, but demanding compensation for nuclear veterans when in opposition. And here are some clips.
But the UK remains the only nuclear test country in which there is no scheme at all for compensation and recognition. So that's why, on behalf of the British Labour Party, I've said to our veterans, your campaign is our campaign. It's why our British Labour Party leader, Keir Starmer, has met with veterans and their families, the first ever party leader in Britain to do so. We are totally together on the campaign for justice, for compensation.
Okay, that was current Defence Secretary John Healey. And we have another one from the lady who is now Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner. Here's that.
Myself and my Labour colleagues are calling on the Secretary of State for Defence to undertake the following actions. Liaise with the Treasury to set up an appropriate financial compensation programme for veterans and their descendants, as America, France, Australia, China, Russia, Fiji and the Isle of Man have done.
Now, Steve, those demands were made in 2022 when Labour was in opposition. And considering lots of people are going to say, it's very easy to promise stuff in opposition. Of course, they've promised something and they've then broken their word. It's easy when you're not in government. How seriously did you and the other campaigners take this at the time?
Really serious. I mean, certainly, and also when we met them, I kind of thought, well, at last, I believed what they said. And I just thought, at last, here is someone who can actually do something if they get in power. And they will. I really believed that they would, that they'd be different. Because we voted them in for change, and it doesn't seem like we've got change. It's just the same old stuff coming out, and we're still not getting anywhere or anywhere fast.
Yeah. Now, Alan, you were. I mean, these videos were self-shot, weren't they? And they weren't scripted. I think Lab Rats asked Angela Rayner and John Healey if they could provide a video for the reunion that was being held that year for veterans in 2022, and they provided these of their own volition, as it were. You organised those events and everything. How did the room receive it when they saw those videos?
There was quite a lot of positivity in the room when we saw them. There were a few, especially the longer campaigners. Who went, it's very easy to say that because you're not in the power and don't have the power to do anything about it now. It's very easy to call out the government in opposition. But I personally, like Steve, was very positive about it because we'd asked them just for a message. We didn't ask them for what to be in the message, just to give them a message of hope and that we had something positive for them. So as you said, Susie, they were unscripted. We didn't give them anything to say, just to give a message. So they decided what was in that message. They decided to put those together. And they're very positive. We will do this. It's a scandal. It's unbelievable that we've not done anything. So it went down very well at the reunion, but say the older veterans that have been there and done it since the 80s were like, yeah, we've been here before. We've been here before.
Now, Steve, whose dad is a nuclear veteran, Steve Foote, said their words in government, or any actions in government, are as powerful as their words in opposition. What do you think, everybody? Do you think that Alan and Steve here and the rest of us were perhaps a little bit too naive in trusting what the Labour politicians said in opposition? It is one of those things where, like in the 80s and in the 90s, in opposition, Labour was very pro the nuclear veterans. We didn't have the evidence then we do now of what was done to them, but they were very, very pro, and they voted and so on in favour of nuclear veterans often, and didn't get very far because of the Thatcher government's majority. And then when Tony Blair got into power in 97, he wrote to the British Nuclear Test Veterans Association, as it was at the time, and said, well, now I'm in power and I've seen all the evidence, I don't think you've got a case, and turned his back on them. And that's why some of the older veterans tend to think, well, yes, they do betray you when they get into power. The difference, I think, here, Steve, was that they were on video, and they weren't just, saying something that could be, a piece of paper that could be fish and chips tomorrow. They were caught on video. They were saying it to your faces. And this was, as Alan was saying, of their own volition. They weren't being encouraged to say this. We just wanted a hello, I hope you have a nice reunion. And we got stuff that's now coming back to bite them, haven't we?
Yeah, and I mean, especially when we met them face to face. You look into their eyes, and they tell you this to your face. And there was a real air of, yeah, I believe you. It's like there was almost trust being built as we were speaking. And especially when I explained about the worries I had for my son. And Kia sort of took me aside afterwards and looked me in the eye again and said, look, I'm a dad too. I get it. I understand. And that's the moment that I thought, actually, here's someone we can deal with. Here's someone that can make a difference. And, I'm definitely voting for you, put it that way. And then here we are now, wondering whether that was pantomime and theatre and empty words.
This is the thing. I mean, there's the suggestion, isn't it? If they're just saying this cynically, Alan, then they wouldn't have. It's kind of counterintuitive. If they were just cynically saying anything to get your vote, sort of thing, then they wouldn't have said the compensation stuff, because they would have been clever enough not to make that kind of commitment, knowing at the time that it was bogus. They wouldn't have done that, I think. So the fact that they did make it, I think that adds to, logically, it adds to the fact that they were being genuine at the time. What do you think?
Yeah, and absolutely. And when we were at the Labour Party conference, Angela Rayner has sat on our table, listened to John Morris with his demands, and said, I will do everything in my power to get those demands for you, John. I agree with you. And she sat there looking at us, telling us, I will do everything, when I'm everything that I could possibly do. And yet, as Deputy Prime Minister, is she doing everything that she could possibly do right now? Yeah, if there's people listening to this, why aren't you doing what you said you were going to do? And that's the thing for us, especially, is, yeah, you have to give them time. We've given them time. We've given them the space. Do something about it now. We are in, because of all your work and the work of the campaigners, the evidence is overwhelming now. We're in such a much better place. They cannot deny it anymore. And as you said, to go on record with a video that you know is going to be played, they're not young politicians. They've been around for a long time. They know that they're going to resurface again and again and again. To do that, we had hope that, right, now you're in the power, you're in position. You think John Healey as Defence Secretary, head of the MoD, could do this right now if he wanted to. And that's where the letdown is for us. That you can understand it in opposition, we can lobby, we can do, but now you're in that position, you can do it now. Do it now.
Yeah, and there are ways through it which aren't expensive, as I'm sure we'll get onto later on. But I mean, what do you think, everybody? How do you feel that the Labour government has handled this? How do you feel they ought to handle it? Get into the comments, let us know. I mean, elsewhere on these videos is Armed Forces Minister and Devonport MP Luke Pollard, who's saying on this show, actually, on this show, he came on again, totally out of nowhere, wasn't asked about this, said it was really dumb, quote unquote, for the Tories not to have designed a compensation scheme. Now, he was being asked at the time about the medal, which we hadn't got at that point. So all he had to do was talk about the medal, and he didn't. He said the Tories should design a compensation scheme. Now, Steve, there'll be lots of people who would say, look, things have changed since then. You know, we've had Liz Truss. We've had another 3 years of Brexit. We've had Trump's tariffs, and war in Ukraine. There's been economic issues, spending cuts. It's too much to expect any government to just keep all the promises it made before all that stuff happened, because events, you know, things change. What would you say to that?
I would say, well, it's always been like that. There's always been something happening in the world that money has to be diverted to, and there seems to be a pot for it. So to turn around and say, well, they can't afford it now, I say, well, yes, they can, because they can afford all the other things. There has to be a reserve fund somewhere. And if they're not going to, what does that say about what they think about us? It's like, oh, well, if we're going to deny anyone, let's deny those people. You know, these are servicemen that gave Britain the nuclear deterrent, which has kept them safe. So surely the one people you should be repaying is the people you've got your security to thank for.
Yeah. And I suppose as well, there's the argument, isn't there? There is compensation that goes out to this group of people who are generally elderly, some of their families perhaps as well that may benefit, who are, you know, have a number of chronic health conditions between them. The money actually just kind of goes around in a circle, because you're sort of saving money on other stuff and it goes into the economy, and people buy something for their house or some kind of new car, or they go on a holiday or whatever it might be, but they spend that compensation. And people who are, you know, disabled like yourself, Steve, may use it to buy an extra bit of equipment, which means you have to actually take slightly less benefits or whatever it might be. You don't, it's not just handing out cash and it goes into a black hole. It's they can find money when they want to buy a tank. That's just the thing that bothers me a bit. Now, I'd love to know what your questions are. Now, Susan says her father was a nuclear veteran as well. Labour have completely let us down. They spoke to us and told us our campaign was their campaign, and as soon as they're in power, they blackballed us. And that does seem to be the sort of the overarching view on the veterans and their families. And I will say, from my conversations with people who are working in government, is that they are very sad about that. They're genuinely. They don't want you to think that way, but they're not cross. They're kind of like, we're trying, but I don't think they really know how or where to push, put it that way. And there's the issue of money. Now, we do need to move on to the big story of the past couple of weeks. And on VE Day, veterans were joined by Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Greater Manchester, to report allegations of criminal misconduct in public office to the Metropolitan Police. Here's a little video that the Mayor's studio team put together.
Get truth and justice for our nuclear test veterans, because if we don't do that as a country, the words that we speak about veterans will forever be hollow words.
It hits you, it throws you into the ground, it burns you.
Although I've had cancer, I've had a blood disorder, cancer, they said I've got the wrong sort of cancers and it wasn't due to radiation.
My father told his GP that he had been flying through nuclear clouds.
Blood was bursting out my mouth like Dracula, dripping all down my clean white.
As anybody will realise, the death of your child is something that is very traumatic.
Keir Starmer, first Prime Minister to definitely know that this happened.
It's hard sometimes to grade injustices, but this one is, you could say, the most epic of them all.
The troops who took part in nuclear weapons tests during the Cold War have been battling an invisible enemy for 7 decades. The Mirror is the only newspaper that has been with them every step of the way.
Today, we're here at Scotland Yard to hand over evidence of crimes by the British state committed against these forgotten heroes.
Now, that rather brilliant video was shot by a young videographer from the Mirrors team called Cholan, who comes from South Korea. And interestingly, he said, it's amazing, he said, it's like this with governments all over the world. You have evidence, you know something's gone wrong, you say it didn't happen until you're forced to say that it was. And it's not something that's just unique to the British government or indeed to the Ministry of Defence. Alan, you've been involved in this campaign now with Lab Rats and the BNTVA, for a couple of decades, I should think. How much of a step is it to be going to the police with something?
Oh, it's massive. It's a massive step. And, it wasn't a decision that was taken lightly. We know that as a campaign group. It's a massive step to file this misconduct charge and to really sort of put on record that there are good Labour MPs around and there are people that are supporting us. It's not the whole Labour Party. We've got some great supporters. Andy's been a great supporter, Rebecca Long-Bailey and Emma Lulbuck, and these people. So John Hayes, it's cross-party that want this sorted and want it done. So we didn't want to have to do this as a campaign group, but we have done it as a campaign group because they're not listening to what it is. And if you look at that dossier, that 500-page dossier that you produced, there's evidence there of so much of a people don't like the word cover-up, but it's misleading people. You've got civil servants misleading ministers who are then making statements in Parliament because of what they've been told. You've got people classifying databases because they are, we'll just classify it and then nobody can get near it. There is so much in there, and it's not just one strand. It's not just like this person said this and that's wrong. There is so much evidence in that dossier that you cannot deny it. So to take this step is massive, and to have Andy's support to do that with this case, to take it to the Met Police. And I really hope that they take it as seriously as they should. And again, that somebody doesn't step in and go, right, actually, you need to just push that to one side. I really hope that they take it because it's huge. Yeah. It's massive. We've never done that before in the decades of campaigning.
Well, we've never had the evidence before, I think, certainly not the time that I've been doing it, about a mass biological monitoring program. So this is the essence of the Nuked Blood Scandal, is that these men, 40,000 from the UK and the Commonwealth, sent to take part in hundreds of nuclear bomb tests and minor radiation experiments, if you can have a minor radiation experiment, were subject to orders basically for mass biological monitoring, blood tests, urine tests, chest x-rays. And the results of these tests are now mysteriously missing from their medical files. We have found some of them, and we don't know if they're in those people's medical files because names have been redacted and so on. And we've also found, as you saw in that video, a lady called Jane O'Connor, her dad, Terry Gledhill, who sadly died now. He is the one veteran that we have found both the blood tests that were taken and the medical records, and they're not in, right? And a memo about his blood test is what blew open the Nuked Blood Scandal in 2022, just after, in fact, Angela and John shot those videos, after which it did seem, after that period, really, that Labour went a bit quiet. Funny that. Now, I just want to very quickly go over the crime that these guys have been, people are talking about, which is misconduct in public office. And it's a difficult crime to define because it's not written down anywhere in legislation. Okay, it is a common law offence, i.e. it is something where, Britain just tends to do this over time. So we've kind of arrived at misconduct in public office as a law. But what we've arrived at as a definition is that a public official, so anyone who's in service of the government in some way, whether it's a police officer or a firefighter or an MP or a civil servant, a public official performs their function, does something in their job unlawfully. Now, it can be a civil offence or it can be a criminal offence, but they do something that's unlawful in the course of their job. And they have to either know that that's going to injure a third party, which you could argue with withholding biological data, medical data from someone, it would probably be quite likely to, or they've got to be reckless as to the risk of it causing injury to a third party. Now, like a speeding offence, it's a strict liability thing. You don't have to know that you did it. You just have to have not made sure that you weren't doing it. right? So that's the kind of the essence of what's being discussed, which is that not that the blood tests were taken at the time, that seems to be the right thing to do, is that they've subsequently been removed from men's medical files, and that then ministers have been repeatedly briefed and documents have been repeatedly secretly classified so that you don't actually know those blood tests and urine tests and chest x-rays all took place. That would appear to be misconduct, and that's the basis of the allegation that's been made to the Met. Now, Steve, you've been denied your dad's medical records from his time at Marilinga at the minor trials, which was a series of about 600 experiments, exploding radioactive material all over the outback to see where it went. And the answer is it went everywhere. Now, if you have a genetic condition, you should have a right to see a parent's medical records. You have some genetic conditions, Steve, and you've been denied it. Your mum, as a widow, should have a right to see your dad's medical records. She was denied too. But I think in one of our recent meetings with the minister, you've now been told you can have them. So presumably they've landed on your lap right now.
Not yet. We've gone from, as you say, the full circle of no, we haven't got any records to, yeah, we've got the records with the information you want, but you can't have them. And now I had an email saying, we've had a change in position regarding the medical records. You need to reapply. So I did that probably about 2 weeks ago, but I've heard absolutely zilch back. Got all the documents together, sent them all off, did everything I needed to do. But yeah, not a word back yet, no confirmation or anything. So
hang on a minute. A change in position?
Yes.
So that means the previous position was that you didn't get them?
Yes.
Well, that would be unlawful.
Yes.
So it was a position to be unlawful.
It seems that way. Well, you would think
forward me that email, Steve, because I think the lawyers are going to want to see it. Yeah. They've had a change in the past few weeks. Gosh, why? What could have sparked the change? And then you've got to reapply, even though they've got the details of you having applied before because they've written back to you. And they've got to reapply, and now you still wait.
I got the email shortly after we met Al Carnes. Funny enough.
Yeah, so having gone in to see the Veterans Minister and reminded him that you don't have that sort of sparked a change in position of some sort, but you still don't have. So we'll have to wait and see, I suppose, what you get and whether it is the full medical record.
That was a question that Steve asked specifically at the meeting, was this a change just for me or was it a change for everybody?
And what was the response?
The answer was, we believe, as the Office for Veterans Affairs, obviously we're only talking to lower level officials, that it is a change for everybody.
Yeah.
Right, so if anyone's watching this who's a nuclear descendant and has a condition that their doctor or GP would confirm is perhaps genetic and inherited in some way, hasn't got to be related to radiation, they think it's possibly genetic, you have a right to see your father's medical record and get in touch with any one of us and we'll help you figure out how to do it, because it seems there's been a change in position for whatever reason. Now, Steve, all that stuff about, you could have it, you shouldn't have it, you do have it, you don't have it, whatever. Does any of this qualify as misconduct to you, or is it just a cock-up, which is, I suppose, what the MoD would
well,
probably
it's misconduct. It has to be, because certainly that email I got which said, we've got all the information in the scope of your inquiry, but we are withholding that record. Somebody made that choice. They've looked and said, there's the information he wants. Should I give it to him? And the answer is no. And we had a right to that. And a legal right to that. So by them saying no, they must know that that is wrong. Therefore, it's got to be misconduct in public office, and also it's unpleasant to people like me. It's upsetting. So it's just awful.
Yes, that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, there's a difference between, I suppose, being unpleasant and being criminal. But if it's both. Then they're a bit stuck. Now, what do you think, everybody? Do you think this is just, bureaucracy and they just need to get a bit of a kick up the bum? And if so, why aren't the government just doing that? Because that's a kick up the bum is free, you'd have thought. Or is there something more to it? Get into the comments and let us know. Steve says, and like Steve, another Steve, this is, I genuinely thought this government would be better and do the right thing. I feel they've let the veterans and descendants down badly. Let's hope that some of them might be paying attention, Steve. Richard says, money, including the lack thereof, is the root of all evil. This is appalling to be observing it. How do we look people impacted by this in the eye and say we're such a great nation, especially, Richard, on VE Day, when everyone's celebrating the efforts of what they call the greatest generation. And Dee says, money isn't the root. The minds of those in control of said money are the evil ones. I don't know they're evil necessarily. They're certainly a bit crap. Steve, another Steve says, full of Steves today. Has this never been raised in PM's question time to put Starmer on the spot? Steve, on his very first PMQs, his very first one at the dispatch box, Emma Lewell-Buck, the MP for South Shields, said to him, will you sit down and have, organise a special one-year tribunal that these veterans want to resolve these issues, which would be cheaper and easier than everything else. And he said, I'll arrange for meetings with a relevant minister for you. That's led us into the meetings with Al Carnes, the veterans minister, who said, I'm going to do an urgent review of the records, and I need 6 months. 6 months later, we went back in, and Alan, what did he say?
I need another 6 months because I haven't got anything for you, and I haven't got any information that we want about who's doing it, how much money has been put aside for it, how many people are doing it, what you found so far. I can't give you anything. Even, well, what's the deadline for it? Really sorry, I can't give you that either.
They have looked at 19,000 records, which is probably even more than I've looked at over the past 20 years. And I found loads of stuff and stuff I've looked at. So they must have found something in that 19,000. And we don't know. Steve 2, I think we have to call you all to give you numbers now. Steve 2 says, what happens if the Met Police don't follow up and investigate? Right. Glad you asked me that, Steve, because this is where we are now. So it's got to, what the Met have to do is assess the evidence that we've given them and decide if that merits opening a formal investigation, which again costs money, and put some bodies on it, basically. If they think it's worth investigating, they then have to start gathering the evidence, speak to witnesses. We've given them a list of witnesses, which include current and serving ministers, named high-ranking civil servants, officials, people at the atomic weapons establishment, just everybody, basically, and lots of veterans as well. And various lawyers who've been involved in cases over the years where they were told point blank, there wasn't any blood testing. What are you on about? So if they gather enough evidence from that, they will then pass a file to the Crown Prosecution Service, which will have to decide if there's a public interest in prosecution. And I should point out that the cover-up we're talking about here is not what happened in the 1950s, which is too long ago to litigate. We're talking about since about the year 2000. So the last 20, 25 years. We've got documented evidence of people saying there wasn't any blood or urine testing. And that's the thing that the Met Police are going to be asked to investigate. So they've got to decide whether they want to open an investigation, is the current thing. And they've had, 10 days, nearly 2 weeks. I'm giving them a bit of space to have that assessment without being regularly hassled by me. But I am going to ring them later today because I think it's time to see how it's progressing. Leslie says, this is like a replay of what my parents went through. Do let us know what it is that your parents went through, Leslie. It sounds like they've been involved in a scandal of some sort. But this is the kind of exactly the playbook that the infected blood victims had, that Hillsborough victims had, that Grenfell is going through now, that the post office had. It seems to be how governments worldwide just deal with scandal, which is badly. Now, if they do decide that there is something to investigate here and pass a file on to the CPS, Alan, I suppose the question is, how much is hanging on the Met's decision, and what happens if they say no?
I mean, it's a big thing if they say no. We as a campaign group have got lots of other options to go to. But for us, if they say no, there's not enough evidence, there's not enough, we gather more evidence. We keep going. We never stop because we know that what they've done is wrong. I mean, how can you have in that? I mean, I know in that evidence, you have got a lawyer who's been told and stood in court that they couldn't bring a witness because he was dead. But we know that he wasn't dead. So how can they deny that fact? So there's so many facts in that dossier that we know about that they have to investigate. You have to go through it. Whether they go through all of it and say, well, actually, not this bit, but there are so many channels in there and bits of information that they have to investigate and look through. And the only way they wouldn't is if somebody higher up put some pressure on them or came in and said, don't we want to do this? But if it leads to, actually, we're not going to do that, but we're going to do this 1 year fast track inquiry now because of it, great. That's what we wanted in the first place. That's what we've been fighting for a while now. Or if it leads to something else, they go, actually, look, ministers, you really need to look at this. There are some really, really, really bad things in here that we really think you need to look at in a different way. That's fine. Work with us. We're here. We want to work with them. That's the thing. People think we're fighting them all the time. Well, we're fighting them all the time because they don't engage with us in enough detail to be able to work with them. We offer it every time we go to a meeting. Work with us, work with us, work with us. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Come back in 6 months. And that's the problem for us, is that if we all worked together and worked on a solution to the problem, we could have solved it. We could have.
Yeah, I think once they get into government, there's obviously an awful lot of other stuff going on. I mean, there's EU Brexit renegotiations today. There's Donald Trump. There's war in Israel. There's all kinds of stuff kicking off. And to get a government minister's attention is a lot more difficult than getting an opposition minister's, shadow minister's attention. And so you have to kind of be a terrier on their ankle and then work your way up the leg, basically, until you get to somewhere sensitive enough that they actually notice you. I think we're at about the kneecap so far, but we'll have to carry on and see how far we get. Now, part of the misconduct in public office, as Alan mentioned there, refers to something called the Merlin database. And this is a collection of records which were gathered in about 2007 at the Atomic Weapons Establishment and for use in a court case, which ultimately failed. Now, that court case, the lawyers involved in it were not able to search the Merlin database. They could only give the MoD some keywords that they would like searched, and then they would get the answers back. And afterwards, that database was classified on the grounds of nuclear proliferation and terrorism. We have since found a lot of blood documents on that database, a lot of information about blood testing, a lot of policy documents about blood testing and urine testing. And it seems to be that someone has unlawfully used the national security exemptions in the Public Records Act to lock that database away. That, again, would be a fairly major case of misconduct in public office if it is considered to have harmed anybody as a result. Now, the MoD has got a comment about all this, which I'm going to read to you because it's really interesting and quite funny. So an MoD spokesman said, "We refute these unsubstantiated claims, and ministers and officials acted properly based on the evidence available to them at the time. We recognise the huge contribution that nuclear test veterans have made to national security. The Minister for Veterans and People has commissioned officials to look seriously into unresolved questions regarding medical records as a priority, and this is now underway. This work will be comprehensive and it will enable us to better understand what information the department holds in relation to the medical testing of service personnel who took part in the UK nuclear weapons tests." There's no substantiation, Alan, but it's substantial enough we're having a look into it because we're worried. They're no longer they're just saying at the time, no one knew about this. We did the right thing at the time. Well, hang on, that's a bit different. So we never did it. And they're now also saying, instead of saying, as they have done for many decades, there was no individual medical testing of the men, they're now going, there might have been some individual medical testing of the men. So their comment starts off going, well, it's completely unsubstantiated, and then goes on to substantiate it in a way. And saying it's not substantiated is not the same as saying it's wrong, is it?
No, absolutely not. I mean, if you read into that statement, it's, especially at the time. Well, the MoD knew the Merlin database was created at the time. They created it. Somebody created it. Somebody put the information in there. Somebody decided what information was in there, and somebody decided how to classify it. Yeah. So to say, oh, it's suddenly now at the time we didn't know we had that information is just, well, that is, to me, it's a I'm covering my own backside statement. You've sort of found us out now. You found out that we've got this database, and you found out that it's classified. And actually, it does actually contain information that we really didn't want you to know that it contained. And now you know it. What are we going to do about it?
Yeah, we're looking into it in a big hole, and we're going. I think they're a bit frozen in the headlights, to be honest, rather than intentionally trying not to do something or to cover up now. I think they're just like that.
Yeah. And it's almost like a little child that you've caught red-handed. They go, "I didn't do it," and then you give them the evidence, and they go,
yeah. You've got biscuit crumbs.
Maybe I did. Maybe I did. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all down your front, and I think it was you, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Now, Steve, I suppose the question is, how optimistic are you that they're going to find anything in their review? But also, like Alan was talking about there, the idea of having we've already got a civil case that's underway that would take years to be litigated. A criminal complaint could take years of investigation and then court. No one really wants that, do you? I mean, the idea is, I think at the moment, just to, as Alan was saying, is to actually get in and see Keir Starmer again this time, and to say, look, let's not do any of that stuff. Let's not do the expensive time wasting thing, and just get some answers. How would that work? Why do you want to do it? And do you think it would work?
Well, I am an optimist by heart, so I'm hoping that if we can get in to see Keir Starmer and just kind of, as Alan said before, work together to bring about a resolution, so we avoid going to court, because we don't want this pulled out over 5-10 years. And surely the answer is in their hands, that can bring about a good resolution that make everybody happy. Okay, maybe not the Treasury, but it would also be quite a good news story for the government. And yeah, with regards to things like the medical records, it's the information is there. There's no denying that now. The evidence is there. So surely it's just a matter of time before something snaps, and it has to come out. Because if you look at the post office and you look at infected blood, eventually the truth started coming out. And look where they are now. And surely we are just a small way behind those people. And, we're next. It will happen.
Yeah, that's what veterans have said to me always over the years. This is going to come out eventually. But Alan, the issue is, I think that Hillsborough, infected blood, many of the people that were involved in that were quite young at the time. And it didn't take 70 years for those things to come to the fore. It took 20, 30 years. And it was therefore within their lifetimes. Where are we with the nuclear veterans? How old are they, and how many of them are left?
Well, so average age 86 now. We're into another year. We lose veterans every week. Every week I get told of veterans' funerals. And what they want now, to start with, before they go, is they want an apology. Mm-hmm. They want that, yes, what you've been fighting for, we did you wrong. And we have done you wrong. And here's the evidence. And there was, not just at the time, but this continued process all the way through till to present day, hold our hands up and say, we did you wrong, like the Americans did with the human experimentation. Yes, we did you wrong. We shouldn't have done it. That's what most of them want now. Most of them go, look, I'm old enough. I just want that. So that somebody says to me, we did you wrong. What comes later with compensation and that sort of stuff, and how we resolve that, that's a different matter. But they want this apology. They want them to say, yes, we did it. Yes, we covered it up. Yes, we had that information and we decided to hide it from you and not give it to you. That's all they want. And that, the sad thing is, that could be achieved, that first bit of a process, of a phased process of how we're going to solve it, that could be solved in weeks. And
yeah. So it sounds like where the campaign is at the moment, then quickly to sum up, is there's the civil suit, which is rumbling away. There's a criminal complaint, which is just shoved a knife in the ribs. And in the meantime, what the campaigners really want is none of those things. They're kind of almost tools to get the politicians to actually focus attention on what they have previously promised and forgotten clean about. And what you really want is to see the Prime Minister and get that apology before there's any kind of an investigation, which might be the difficult ask. But Steve, how important would that apology be to you, to get in the room with Keir Starmer and to have him either say to you, as he did, I think, didn't he issue an apology of some sort to us when he was in the opposition? He said that your country had done you wrong and a grave disservice and it needed sorting out. I mean, how much would it matter if he said that at the dispatch box, for example?
It would be huge because, as Alan said, it's what the veterans want. It's also what I want as well, because certainly my life is very different to what it should have been like. So my family's been impacted. My son's been impacted. So an apology would be the first step into what comes next. But once they've apologised, it puts them in the right mindset to say, okay, we've done wrong. How do we sort it? Rather than how do we prevent it being sorted? So I think the apology hopefully will change the way they approach things.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, isn't it? Because if the apology comes after, as it often does, after a public inquiry of some sort, then the whole inquiry is about arguing whether we really have to apologise for anything and how much can we get away with. Whereas if you apologise at the start, it's far more reconciliatory to have a look into it after that. We'll have to see how that goes. But Keir Starmer, if you're watching, my phone is on and we would like to meet you. And we are meeting other people in Westminster. So you're on the list, mate. Anyway, thank you very much, guys, for taking us through all that. Now, we have managed to find some good news for you on this. It's quite difficult to do that, I'll tell you now. We have managed to find some, and here it is. So, the Merlin database, which has got so much of this stuff on, was built entirely to hold information relevant to personal injury. So a lot of stuff that should be of medical interest to veterans and their families is going to be opened. It is going to be declassified, which does apparently not involve an admission that it shouldn't have been classified in the first place. And now we did think when this first was given to us that it's going to happen via the National Archives. It was going to cost, because the way the National Archives does stuff, they have download limits. You can only order, it takes them 30 days to deliver your file, and it's £1.30 a page and all the rest of it. Now we thought that was going to cost £1.2 million. And take 23 years just to order the records, another 2,000 years to actually see them, right? I was preparing a lovely story kicking the MoD about that. But it now sounds like the MoD are trying to make it free. Now, we have no idea how or when or if it's going to work, but fingers crossed. Steve says, do they call it Merlin because it magically loses bits of the records they don't want us to see? Nice one. Now, we don't know how Merlin is going to be made available to us. Presumably, there's kind of a sword in a stone or something. Someone's got to come along and remove it. But Alan, is this proof, perhaps, that the current government, even if they're not getting it perfectly right all the time, at least their hearts are sort of trying to be in roughly the right place?
Yeah. And I must actually call out the officials at the OVA today they listened to us on this, because we were at the meeting when they said it's going to go to National Archives, and we were like, whoa, hang on a moment. Yeah, 100 documents a month. I worked out if it was just me, it would take me 197 years to get that information from the National Archives, and the cost. And they were almost astonished at me, like, I didn't know that. I had no idea. What do you mean there's download? What do you mean you can't get this information? So those people who've been told that instruction then pass that back. So the regular meetings that we have with the OVA are good. That's the great thing, that they are listening, but it's just the people above them who are making the decisions and telling them what to say to us. So those OVA people are feeding it back. So they do listen sometimes to us, what we have to say, especially when we tell them, go on the National Archives and read it yourself. Even they admit that's crazy, that's stupid, you can't do that. You can't have it that way. So they do listen. So there is positive. We have some very good positive meetings with them. It's just the level that we want to be at and the level of interaction we want a lot more. Yeah,
it's getting through the fog of the civil service, isn't it? I mean, Steve, do you think that perhaps it shows that, you know, the minister, he's issued this decision and said, you declassify that database now. We're going to publish it all to these guys. Does that mean that the ministers, despite everything we've said previously in this broadcast, actually, you know, are trying to do the right thing?
Yeah, I think deep down the minister is a good man, and most of the ministers are good men and women, and their hearts are in the right place. They do want to help, but it's that feeling that it's the hidden civil servants that are making a lot of the decisions, and really it's a case of the tail's wagging the dog. It should be the ministers saying, this is what I want, do it. But it seems it's just the wrong way round, and that kind of culture needs to change.
Yeah. Well, the good thing, I suppose, is the minister said, I want this declassified, do it. I want it free, do that. And then when it's come out to us, we go, that doesn't work. And it's gone back up again to the minister, and the officials haven't actually blocked it or said to anybody, well, you can't do this, you can do that. So now they're having to go away and actually get into the machinery of the National Archives and figure out who can host, I think was going to be roughly 750,000 pages of evidence, which people are going to be trawling through. Not just us as well, historians, researchers, all sorts of Cold War experts and stuff. And lawyers, I should think. So there's going to, I don't know when that's going to happen. It's probably going to take a while, but we are still pushing on that. So there's some good news anyway. Something is coming. Something is moving. It's just,
and I still personally, Susie, have faith in John Healing. I really do. That he is a good man and that he will come through for us at the end. I still do believe that. After what he spoke to me personally, I still do believe him. So if he's listening to this, John, come on. Get to it.
Yeah, it's not just a case of being believed, you have to actually do it. Yeah. And hopefully Merlin, along with everything else, is just, the first rock down the mountain that starts gathering speed and takes the rest of the mountain with it, and we'll get there in the end. Anyway, thank you all the Steves for taking part. Steve's 1, 2 and 3. Thank you, Alan. Thank you everyone else for watching, and do keep in touch with the Mirror's Nuked Blood Scandal for the latest updates. We will see you again on Wednesday for another edition of the News Agenda, back on our normal News Agenda stuff. Until then, everybody, stay safe, take care, tatty bye.